As I mentioned last night, this week we celebrate the 10th anniversary of the College of Chapters as the premier leadership development program for commanders at Sigma Nu. A little more than 10 years ago, a group of Sigma Nu brothers gathered on that Blue Ridge mountaintop that I mentioned, not far from here, ranging in their ages from mid-20s to mid-50s. The group of 11 men came together and considered their highest responsibility as the High Council of Sigma Nu fraternity. That responsibility was to determine the fraternity's strategic plan for 2010 biennium. To decide what must be the fraternity's highest priorities to ensure the continued success and growth of our fraternity. At that time, the High Council was in a unique position to turn its attention to a new frontier, the achievement of excellence at every collegiate chapter. Recognizing that the single most important experience relating to achieving our mission is the experience of each individual brother at his chapter. That visionary High Council in 2010 established chapter strength, the fraternity's highest strategic imperative. Again, as I mentioned last night, every High Council since 2010 has reached the exact same conclusion. As we know, strong chapters are most capable of delivering our mission. It did not take long to recognize that if we want strong chapters, we must have strong commanders. So you will not be surprised to know that one of the very first actions we took in 2010 was to refocus the College of Chapters as an intensive program to prepare the commanders of each collegiate chapter. The race to meet our obligation to excellence had begun, and in 2012, the first College of Chapters, as you are experiencing it today, happened. And this is why we are here together, a full decade later, to do all we can to ensure that you have the knowledge, the skills, and the network to lead and strengthen your chapter. To ensure that you are prepared to lead with integrity and character. To ensure that you know our success depends on your leadership. And to equip you to meet this opportunity. Joining us today after an adventurous day of travels to provide you with insight on what it takes to be a successful commander, the man who was our regent in 2010 and on that mountaintop 10 years ago, a man who has reached the pinnacle of his field of investment banking, a man who has devoted to his family, his community, his church, his fraternity, and his country. A man who will always stop to help a brother. A man who will tell you that the most important lessons in leadership of his life came when he served 2 terms as commander at the MU chapter at the University of Georgia. The architect of our obligations to excellence and the 62nd Regent of Sigma Nu fraternity, please welcome Brother Robert Durham.
Thank you, Brother Regent, for that kind introduction. Thank you for the warm welcome. It is especially exciting for me to be here at this event, the 10th anniversary of the College of Chapters. Just set my clock here so I don't keep y'all longer than I need to. When I got to the hotel last night about 1 o'clock, I had been thinking about this event for weeks. I checked in, gave me the keys to my room, and I went up to my room and I opened the door and I realized that, I guess through the good favors of Executive Director Brad Beecham, I had a suite, 2-room suite. Bed, TV in one, sitting area, had kitchen, a lot of other stuff in the other one. And it all came flashing back to me. That's the exact layout I had in St. Louis in 2012. And my thoughts went back immediately, not to any one particular thing that happened at that college chapter, but what happened after. When we gathered back in that suite, as all the alumni volunteers and the high council members gathered back in there to celebrate the success of that event, because this was new for us. We'd never been there before. We didn't know how it would come off, how it would be received, but it was a success. And so immediately last night, that was the first thought that came back to me. And so, Brad, thank you for setting it up that way. That really helped a lot. I've been to a lot of great Sigma Nu occasions in my Sigma Nu career. In 12 days, that grew to be 46 years as an issue of this fraternity. But this event right here stands out as one of the highlights for me to attend college chapters. So, Brother Regent, thank you for the invitation to be here with you. You know, you've heard a lot about, you've heard us say obligation to excellence a lot. That was a theme coming out of a Grand chapter in 2010. And that first college of chapters in 2012, we continued to mention obligation to excellence. But that was also, a little bit of history here, that was the first time that we used the phrase history, traditions, and heroes. And we tied those into the obligation to excellence. So these different phrases that you hear just kind of give you some background on where they came from. When I was asked to come speak to you today, to talk about, as Brother Regent said, what it takes to be a successful commander, maybe my views on how this has progressed over time. The first thing I want to tell you is, in order to be a successful commander, and in order for this event to have the maximum, you have to come here. You had to have come here last night and stay through the rest of the week with the same mindset that myself and all the other alumni volunteers in here, the same mindset we all have as we approach this. We did not come here to break even. We came here to win. And you need to approach every aspect of this college of chapters that way. And when you go back to your chapter, don't do it to break even. You're not here to break even. You're here to win. You know, the question of what's it take to be a successful commander? For those of us old guys in here, you know, we're asked a lot, what's it take to be a successful businessman? What does it take to be a successful physician, successful educator, successful attorney? And, you know, people think, is it character traits, whatever it is? And I thought a lot about that question because it's a really deep question. And then I had this realization that what we did between 2010 and 2012, if you just back that up and think about, we were just basically running a grand chapter. And if you took the principles that we used to your local chapter, hey, look, it worked. So I'm not saying it's the only way to do it, but this one worked really well. And so we'll talk about that some. The first thing is, and you've already started this in some of your sessions, is you have to create a vision. Create a vision for what you want your chapter to be. We created a vision on that mountaintop for what we wanted the fraternity to look like. You create your vision. This is what I want my chapter to look like and what I want it to do. You build a plan around that vision, a plan how you're going to make that build happen. Develop your strategies, develop your tactics to help you get to that vision that you have. Once you have the vision fleshed out, once you have the plan to move in that direction, then you clearly communicate it. Those are the first 3 steps we did. We had the dream, we had the vision. We went on that mountaintop and we put meat on the bone. We came up with all our strategic imperatives. Here's what we have to do,
And here's how we're going to have to do it. And as soon as we got back, we started having a series of video presentations emailed out to alumni, division commanders, anybody we could find with an email address, so that they clearly understood what the mission was, because it was a different mission. When I first talked about the obligation to excellence in July of 2010 at Grand Chapter, some people, frankly, were concerned. Some were shocked. Some didn't know if it would work. Some didn't know if collegians would take to it. So we wanted to make sure that we communicated. Here's what we are going to do. Here's what we are doing. Don't worry, here's what we're not doing. But communicate. So create a vision, build a plan around it, and then communicate. Tell the chapter. Here's what we're going to do, guys, and here's how we're going to do it. So that all, again, the Grand Chapter, obligation to excellence, the mountaintop, the video presentation. Soon after I announced obligation to excellence at Grand Chapter, I guess my first official act as Regent is I appointed a special task force made up of alumni brothers I consider to be our best operators. Those alumni volunteers who were connected to chapters, who had continuously exhibited all or most of all the ingredients that are made up in the pursuit of excellence, the critical factors to having a rock chapter. Why did we appoint that task force Hopkins, our best operators? Number one, to put them to work. They needed to go out and find the honorable traditions at all your chapters, convert them into our best practices. The second reason we did it was to build a bench. Give people an opportunity to try out some leadership, to show their skills, see if they liked it, and if they wanted to continue to pursue it, they could do so. Out of that original Task Force Hopkins came immediate past Regent John Hearn, Regent-elect Maury Gaston, several other people in here, and some that couldn't make it here, were on that original task force and have gone on as they have chosen, and some have chosen to stay at the local chapter level, and that's fine. So what do you do with it? You go back and say, I think Chris over here, I wish Chris had run for Rush chairman, but I understand that he's got a tough academic load, and that was his priority, but I want to keep Chris involved. So I'm going to make Chris one of my best operators. And I'm also going to take Jason and Al, and I'm going to give them some responsibility here also, because sometimes there's things that need to get done that are better coming from someone other than me. So you go back and think about your best operators. Maybe it was somebody who ran for an office and didn't quite make it, but they still are committed to the chapter. Engage those people. Those are your best operators. They are your bench. One of those, and get them from every class. Don't just get the guys out of your class, the one below, get them all. Touch everybody. One of those guys may be your successor one day, may be sitting here one day. So build your bench, identify your best operators. Going back to that meeting on the mountaintop, about 2 weeks before we went to it, we had engaged a professional facilitator, not to run the meeting by any means, that was our job. But her job was to make sure we stayed on point, because we could get focused on something and drive it into the ground, be there for months. And so she called me a couple of weeks ahead of time and said, is there anything I need to know? Anything special you want to talk about? And I said, sure. I said, there are no sacred cows, and we will break glass. No sacred cows, and we will break glass. So what does that mean to you? Sacred cows. When we were on that mountaintop, we began a process of evaluating everything we did. Other than what's required by the law of Sigma Nu, everything else was in scope, meaning we were going to look at it. Whether it was financial, just basic operational, every aspect, we looked at it to try to, kind of like doing a triage. Was it relevant? Was it impactful? Was it cost efficient? Was it safe? That's what you need to do. You need to go back and look at every little thing that you're doing. I have one example, like maybe years ago when your chapter was looking for a philanthropy and you couldn't really decide on one. There was one in town somebody liked, so you said, okay, well, let's go do this one over here. We go look at it and see if they're really serving the purpose they claim they do, or is a lot of the money that you and other people raise for them, is that money used just to throw a big party around the holidays where everybody gets dressed up and has a good time and no money goes into the ground for what the project was? Just one example. Look at everything. Look how you pay your bills, which bank you're using. Look at how you run recruitment. How far ahead do you plan? Are you doing any outreach into high schools? Everything must be in scope. Everything. You can't get by saying, well, that's the way we've always done it. That's not going to work. So everything is in scope, just like we did. And then the other thing you do is you've got your sacred cows. Again, if it's not in the law of Sigma Nu, there were some interesting moments there that when we started looking at things, and there are some cows. How many of y'all watch Yellowstone? There's some cows went to the train station after that meeting on the mountaintop, in a nice way. But now you have to be able to make those tough decisions. There are things that you're doing that, back to the sacred cow, that aren't safe. They cost you too much money. Nobody's getting any impact out of it. Wasting people's time. And if you waste people's time, they lose interest. So you've got to really make that hard call. One in particular that we had, under the prior format to this event, the faculty was made up partly of our best operators, those alumni brothers who knew of which they spoke. They'd been there, they'd done that. And then we had some professional facilitators, some friends of Sigma Nu, kind of subject matter experts in their own field. At our October 2010 High Council meeting in Birmingham, when we were really turning this thing over, I said, here's another thing we're going to do. When we get to this next College of Chapters, it's only our best operators. Only our best operators. And somebody sitting around the table said, well, these other people, they're not going to be happy. And it really didn't matter, because our point was nobody touches our commanders other than our best operators. What you can do with that is think about your candidate class. That's one of the most precious commodities your chapter has. It's your future. You spend a lot of time, you spend a lot of money getting them to where they are. Whether you have one or two candidate marshals, put your best operators in there. Let them help them. Let them maybe speak on subjects that they do a good job in. Spread the work around. So that's an example of how you can do that. Just get those guys involved at that level. You know, we talk about rock chapters and rock chapters. It's not about putting plaques on the wall, guys. That's not why we developed that plan. That's not why we do this. Because life inside a rock chapter, for those of you who live it, it's pretty good. I mean, you wouldn't know what to do in some of these other chapters. I mean, in a rock chapter, you're in great financial situation. Academics are great. You got unbelievable relationships with your host universities, your communities. Your alumni go out of their way to help you get job interviews, graduate school placements. Life's good inside a rock chapter. So it's a good goal to have to go back to communicate to your chapter that this is what we want to do. You know, some of you will be in some sessions with Brother Michael Berry. Is Michael here? Is he somewhere in here? He may be out chasing. There he is, back in the back. One of Michael's, and Michael is part of the First Task Force Hopkins. Michael has done a great job in building rock chapters. And one of the things he likes to say is, he quotes that Bible verse, is iron sharpens iron, men sharpen men. Let me give you an example of that. Several of us in here have for years followed a particular class of a chapter which went from near extinction through no fault of their own to I've lost track now, 6, 7 Rock Chapter Awards in a row. I'm going to give you an example here. I'll go to LinkedIn. Here are the guys in this class. Here's how iron sharpens iron. When you build a dream, when you put a plan around it, when you communicate it, and when you get people involved, here's what happens. Now, these guys all came from the southeastern United States. So you'd think, okay, they're all working in the southeast. Partner, venture capital firm, Palo Alto, California. Partner, law firm, Washington, D.C. Partner, private equity firm, New York, New York. Another partner, law firm. These are 2 big law firms. Washington, D.C. Manager, government relations, Fortune 500 company, Washington, D.C. I think some iron got sharpened out of that class. That was a good crew. And that's not the only example. That's what, when your brothers question you about, why are we going to do all this? You're doing it for them. It's their experience. If you get it right and work hard enough over time, that's what you will produce out of your chapter. Another thing, I mentioned LinkedIn. I'll interject this because several people know this. I really enjoy, and I like to help everybody. And I'm LinkedIn. I don't know how many 100 brothers that I've met through college chapters or grand chapter. And if your LinkedIn invitation includes that you're from Sigma Nu fraternity, I will accept it. If it doesn't, I won't. I'm just going to tell you. And that's what you should do with your resumes too. Don't be afraid. Do not put social fraternity. That's the one that gets me the worst. Social fraternity. A man that reached out and helped one of our longtime rock chapters with a very complicated real estate situation, did so because he was a member of another college fraternity and he wanted to help us out. Don't think you're not going to get a job opportunity because you put on there that you're in a fraternity. If you don't get an opportunity because you're in a fraternity, you didn't want to work there to start with. So, what's in it for you? You're going to get a lot, as Brother Regent said, this was the most fulfilling thing I ever did for 2 years. I mean, I was Regent for 2 years, I was commander for 2 years. Both of them were great, but I learned more as a commander, and you will learn more as a commander. You, on paper, when you will look on paper just like somebody who's been out in the world, in the operating world, for 4 to 6 years. Because, they're going to go in somebody's training program and bounce around and grind around and move around. And your resume is going to say, managed organization of, pick it, 60, 160, 200 men. Managed a budget of $100,000, $2 million. Maintained stakeholder relationships at the community and alumni level. These guys aren't going to get that, and you're going to get it right now. So you will be a valuable commodity. That's one part of it, but it's what's in here and what you do for those brothers around you. That's why you're doing this, and that's what's in it for you. It's because, as we identified on that mountaintop, without you, it doesn't happen. Your brothers will remember this for a long time. In 2007, I guess it was, I drove past Regent. Jay Pitts was a regent. I was a vice regent. I drove Jay Pitts to meet one of our more successful alumni, a man who'd been, and he was his chapter's commander back in the 60s. Very successful, wildly successful businessman. We're in his office, and behind his desk there was a plaque that he had just gotten months before from his contemporaries in his chapter. Says, "To our commander." To our commander. People don't forget. They don't forget. So, you've heard all this about the obligation to excellence. Some of you are wondering, where did we get that? Who read that in the book somewhere? Well, I'll tell you a quick story about that one. So back in the 1970s, on Saturdays during football season, there was one network that had the rights to broadcast college football, and there was one college football game broadcast on a weekend. That was it. On this particular weekend, the number 1 team in the country traveled to visit the number 5 ranked team. And at the chapter house at this number 5 ranked team, there was a huge pregame alumni reception, tailgate, the whole 9 yards going on. And there's probably 1,000 people there between the active chapter, their dates, alumni, their families, friends, people scattered everywhere. So about 2.5 hours before kickoff, one of this chapter's most dedicated alumni pulls up, parks in his dedicated parking space that he had in the parking lot, helps his family get out, gets his kids out throwing the football with the other kids, sets up the tailgate thing, makes his favorite cocktail and lights a cigar and starts walking around the property, inspecting every inch of it. The height of the grass, the condition of the bushes, how much pine straw is on the whole thing. Goes through the house, talking to people the whole time. And about an hour later, he's out on the front porch of that house, big, looking out over this huge yard, 4-acre yard, looking out over the river. Probably 700 of those 1,000 people are in that front yard. He goes up, he finds the commander, and he says, okay. He said, give me a report. Commander said, well, things are good. We just wrapped up probably our most successful rush. We got probably the best class on this campus, got some great young men. All our bills are paid. These brothers will only date women from the best sororities. Matter of fact, last night we had the biggest party on campus in preparation for this huge event today. So the veteran alumni looks at him, took that right arm, had the cocktail in his right hand, put his right hand around that boy's shoulder, and took a drag out of that cigar with his left hand, swept it across the crowd. Looked at him, he said, son, these men elected you to lead them. You have an obligation to excellence. That was about 11:30 on a Saturday, 1976, and I remember it like it was 2 hours ago because I was that commander. I never forgot that lesson. The alum that gave me that lesson was Judge George J. Hearn III, who 30-something years later would receive the highest honor that can be conveyed by the High Council, that being the Regent's Medallion of Merit. His son, John Hearn, is our immediate past regent. So yeah, the lesson stuck with me, the obligation to excellence. And I've used it to guide me through everything I've done for this fraternity and in life and in business ever since. So it works, just like the plan that we laid out. That part works. So again, come here to win, not to break even. Go through the steps we outlined so that you can meet your obligation to excellence. And now, I'd like all initiated members of the fraternity to please stand. Join me in a College of Chapters tradition that dates back to 2014. Repeat after me. We are the Legion of Honor. There is no honor in mediocrity. Honor is only attained through excellence. The pursuit of which is fueled by a deep appreciation of our history, our traditions, and our heroes. My brothers have elected me to lead them to excellence. And I will. Thank you. You may be seated. Brothers, you've made your commitment. You've given your oath. You've come here to win. And you've come here to meet your obligation to excellence. I stand ready to help you in any way, anytime that I can. Keep your eyes and ears open the rest of the time that you're here. Soak all this in. Take it back to your chapters and lead your men to excellence. I greatly appreciate the opportunity to be here today. I wish Godspeed on all of you and safe travels back. May God bless all of us in our great fraternity. Call me if you ever need anything. Have a good one.